tech news this week. Talk to us about what... It's NVIDIA, right? I'm just fucking with you. AMD. What's AMD doing? I love to ruin it for you.
AMD is doing wonderful things. AMD is doing wonderful things just as they have been for the last couple of years, starting with the Ryzen line of processors. So RDNA. So AMD, participates in both CPU and GPU market spaces ever since they purchased ATI way back. So AMD just launched their newest series of cards called Big Navi using the RDNA 2 architecture. And the RDNA 2 architecture is kind of big because, we talked about NVIDIA having gone through a major launch not that long ago with the 3070, 3080, and 3090. Big cards, great performance boost over, what they had released previously. And AMD couldn't quite compete with those, mainly because ray tracing was sort of the next generation tech, and they were, NVIDIA really doubled down on it. And now everybody's really seeing the benefits of it now that there's enough integration with it. So AMD, of course, with RDNA 2 and Big Navi decided to jump on board. So just general performance specs here across the board. RDNA 2 offers more than double performance over RDNA. Wonderful hardware and tech and engineering went into this. Specifically, just going into the technical stuff here. There's the Infinity Cache, which most processors have RAM, have a little bit of cache on board to sort of speed up the processing throughput. So AMD learned with CPUs that the more cache you have, generally the quicker that you can process things if you have enough throughput to sort of manage that. And the cache is just sort of like quick way for the processor to grab tons of data and reuse tons of data without having to go back and forth to RAM over and over again. So instead of the normal 16, 20 something, 32 megabytes of on-die RAM or cache for it, it has 128 megabytes.
Jesus, that
of
is
on-die cache for the processor. And just to keep in mind that 2-3 decades ago, 128 megabytes of RAM was considered a lot.
Yeah.
So this is where we've come now.
I also think that if Thanos had the Infinity Cache, he would have defeated the Avengers.
He probably would have a lot faster too.
Yeah, a lot faster.
Yeah. So just some notable features here because we've already talked about Xbox, PS5, and AMD and all of the wonderful things that they're doing together. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was touted from the Microsoft Xbox event for the Series X was the Direct Storage API through Microsoft, which allows the graphics card to load data directly from the hard drive itself. Well, that carries over to PC now with the new generation of PC graphics cards. Not something that NVIDIA has integrated directly because this is a partnership development with Microsoft. Not to say that NVIDIA couldn't do so. It's just that AMD is the first one to get to the first one to the punch here.
Is Direct Storage named after Directx and that whole line?
I would imagine so. I mean, to be fair, the moniker makes sense, but
yeah, it does. That's why I was curious.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess speaking of DirectX though, one of the other pieces that comes with this is DirectX 12 Ultimate. Through a new series of processing features that AMD offers called Fidelity FX. Which offers ray tracing, contrast, adaptive sharpening, denoisers, variable shading, screen space reflections, and super resolution. Ray tracing we've seen before. Of course, it's the calculations of light bouncing off of objects, which includes also sound. Yes, yeah, right. Which includes reflections, which screen space reflections is also supposed to sort of handle of physically moving objects on screen being able to reflect, not necessarily just backgrounds, for example, like you would see on older games or on some current gen and previous gen games. Contrast adaptive sharpening is basically just higher contrast. If it identifies darker or lighter areas of a scene, it's supposed to be a little bit closer maybe to HDR. Denoisers, first off, in 3D rendering, noise is pretty heavy. If you've ever worked with 3D models and all that stuff, working with high-res ray tracing renders introduces a ton of noise onto screen, like a ton of weird you would with a camera anyway, if you're shooting in a really dark scene. So denoisers use algorithms to determine what the pixels should look like based on the pixels around it and the content in the scene. variable shading is basically the ability to take different shading values whenever you're rendering the image in a much smaller, individualized per pixel kind of fashion on screen now. Now, I say per pixel, it's really not. Like the developer is allowed to determine what block size they want to use to determine the shading modifiers for that area. And basically, if it's a particularly dark area, you can increase the shading. If you have a really light scenario, for example, you can decrease the shading or vice versa. But the idea is that it allows for more dynamic contrast kind of scenes on screen by, instead of having like lighting or having zones, to increase or decrease shading, or doing it holistically like a lot of games do now, you can actually have little tiny squares do it.
Interesting.
Screen space reflections, I already talked about. It's basically along the lines of what NVIDIA already offers with ray tracing, for example. And super resolution, which is supposed to be a competitor to NVIDIA's DLSS. Now, super resolution isn't quite DLSS. DLSS uses the machine learning chips or machine learning processing chips or section of the processor for improving the resolution of what's on screen in a much faster fashion by identifying the data on screen in a lower res fashion and upscaling it so that you can get it at 4K quality, even if you're only playing on 1080p, because downsampled content is still better. So if you're using machine learning to determine how to fine tune the details of that, instead of using like anti-aliasing, for example, which is supposed to just take diagonal lines and blur them out to some extent.
Yeah, there was a really cool video that was taking the rounds last week on Twitter of someone who was running Control at 240, but they had they used downsampling to basically make it look like it was 1080p. It was like super interesting to watch the video.
Right.
They were going through the whole technical stuff. I find it fascinating because not everyone has the ability or to buy these crazy monitors, or you might not have it with you at the time, right? You take it. Some people I know take their machines around because you're doing a LAN party or whatever the case may be, borrowing somebody else's monitor. It's not your snazzy 4K whatever. Well, here you can still get some cool shit from that.
Right. So the big benefit here with super resolution, similar to that kind of style, and actually this is something that NVIDIA had actually offered back when the GTX 900 series cards came out, is where you can play older games at super high resolutions, but it's downscaled to your monitor, so the quality actually looks better because the graphics rendering actually gets a little bit more fine-grained whenever you really blow it up like that. So it's a similar process here, which also removes the need for anti-aliasing and whatnot like that, because the downsampling itself will fix a lot of that for you.
Sorry, I dropped a bottle cap and I don't.
I was wondering what you were fishing for.
That's why I'm moving around a little.
It's just like having Legos.
Yeah, there we go. Found
it. So this Fidelity FX line, not every game has to implement all of this. It's of course tailored to whatever you really need out of this. As part of DirectX 12 Ultimate, though, almost every single one of the games I'm about to list here, and there are 35 titles that are already on board with Fidelity FX, or like are in development or have some sort of integration already available. Most of which, of course, are Microsoft games.
But not exclusively. I don't know if you look at that list. There's a pretty big glaring one on there.
Well, so Far Cry 6 is listed on there. World of Warcraft Shadowlands, which I'm actually surprised World of Warcraft is looking at this kind of tech. Godfall, Dirt 5, I think is awesome. Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition for PC.
Boom.
I think that'll look wonderful.
Yeah. It's a beautiful game.
Let's see. Resident Evil 3, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Gears 5, Borderlands 3. Resident Evil 2 is also on this list.
Both of those are the remakes, by the way, not the old ones, the newer ones.
Right.
Why Breakpoint though?
Breakpoint's still selling well enough. Like Ubisoft doesn't give up on a game. I think that's the one thing I applaud them for.
Yeah,
even when a game is released poorly, they still tend to try and make it.
For Honor, Siege.
For Honor's phenomenal with how much that community just carries that game, and Ubisoft has done a great job giving content. That's a different conversation.
No, you're right though. I love to see how much Siege is blown up.
Yeah.
Keep going on the line. Monster Hunter World Iceborne. So I guess when the new expansion comes out, I assume like the entirety of Monster Hunter will have had some sort of integration there. Yeah. And then my favorite, of course, is Microsoft Flight Simulator. But but
that's
already there with that's already there with RTX cards, so I'm kind of interested to see what kind of performance you get out of this.
Death Stranding's in there too.
Yeah, Death Stranding's on here. Detroit Become Human as well.
Yeah.
The F1 games. Yeah. Oh, and the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remakes.
Yeah.
The only one I don't see in here, but it was touted in the reveal conference was Battlefield 5 was also on there. And actually Battlefield 5 was one of the notable games because Battlefield 5's where it really shined. Like, it outperformed the RTX cards by like 5 to 10%. It was actually pretty solid. So
turns out right after the event they got into a fight with a
that's just how it goes, you know. You just drop it, you know. So like a really good list of games there, I think, to really get started with.
Future, right? Yeah.
Did you say Godfall?
Yeah, Godfall's on there. Yeah.
I thought that was a PlayStation exclusive.
Console exclusive, which is why I was saying there's some interest there. Because not exclusives for Microsoft. There's a lot of PlayStation games on there, even if they're only second party.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
So the next two features, anyway, and these are kind of the big ones that were really touted off a lot as far as what kind of performance benefit they really give here. The first one, to be fair, is kind of gimmicky. And AMD is always very good at, it's very serious. Everything's to the point. And then here's the one weird thing we just threw in there. It is called Rage Mode.
Yeah.
Like that isn't a marketing name that was blown out completely. It's essentially just one-click overclocking. It's supposed to use some sort of machine learning to identify what the max capacity of your graphics card is. It may be predefined, to be honest, but the idea is it just automatically turns on the overclock. And realistically, it's a factory-approved overclock. It won't break your warranty doing it because it's an AMD feature. Why would you not turn it on? It's free performance.
I've got a clip. Sorry, I didn't keep interrupting you. I have a clip from Slipknot. You're going to play right before you say Rage Mode because it's just, yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, in my head, it's a very funny joke, okay?
Brent's excited to go Rage Mode, apparently.
Remember that thing we were talking about? It sounds good, but then when you put it on paper, then it's like...
Yeah, I know. Hurry up all my jokes.
Anyway, so this last bit of tech, to me, is sort of one of the big kickers. It's called AMD Smart Access Memory. And essentially, it's a PCI Express direct link bridge between your AMD 5000 series CPU, so the new Ryzen or the new Zen 3 processors that are coming out, and your RX 6000 series GPU's memory.
Okay.
So normally, there's a high amount of latency if a CPU wanted to use traditional PCI Express bus standards to communicate with the graphics card to be able to use its memory. But apparently, with the increased availability, maybe over the top, if your AMD processor needs additional RAM or needs quicker RAM to be able to share between the processor and the graphics card, the processor can grab it directly from the graphics card in high-speed real-time over PCI Express 4.0, instead of having to request it and store it somewhere else on its own memory. It can go over a higher bandwidth bus to get that directly from the graphics card, which apparently, with Smart Access Memory and Rage Mode engaged, it actually gives a 13% performance increase over stock.
Which they showed with Battlefield 5, but we don't know they're actually part of the gig anymore.
Yeah, we don't know. So some of the graphics cards did like the performance specs here. I'm going to get in each of the three cards that they talked about. They did showcase the FPS numbers with just Smart Access Memory, and some of them they did with Rage Mode and Smart Access Memory. So it was kind of a mixed thing on that. But AMD did a really good job. If you look at the frame numbers of basically going blow for blow with NVIDIA to some extent on game for game. Like it was really interesting to see the graph of like, we excel by 10% here, but we lose by like 3% here or 5% here, you know. It was kind of an interesting mix to see. And I'd be interested to know if Fidelity FX doesn't have some sort of improvement maybe on that too, to let the AMD card sort of reign as well. So first off, we have the lower end tier card called the RX 6800. It is the equivalent to the 3070. We didn't get performance comparison numbers to the 3070 itself. We got comparison numbers to the 2080 Ti, because that's sort of the baseline that NVIDIA was using for the 3070, and the 3070 isn't out yet to actually get correct bench numbers from. There have been some reviews, but nothing that I guess AMD could get their hands on to be able to actually test the card again.
Yeah, they're a little trickling out right now.
Yep. So you're looking at 60 compute units, 1.815 gigahertz core clock with a boost clock of 2.105 gigahertz. The 128 megabyte Infinity Cache, 16 gigabytes of GDDR6. Actually, I guess just as a preface, all of these cards come with the 128 megabyte Infinity Cache and come with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6, specifically non-X memory. So it's the lower bitrate lower bandwidth memory as opposed to the GDDR6X that the 3090, the GTX 30, or I'm sorry, the RTX 3080 and 3090 have.
Just with the Infinity Cache alone, that's fucking incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to see what they're doing with this, especially considering what the performance wattage or the power consumption numbers also look like for these two.
Why do you think they went with the non-X instead of the X?
It could have been price, it could have been availability, it could have been any number of things. Realistically, going with the X number probably would have helped them from a performance perspective, but I think that they may have realized that they don't need the higher bandwidth memory if you have a giant cache sitting next to the GPU, or sitting next to actual processing units itself.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, if they can do it with GDDR6 and not 6X, which the 6X, from what I had seen from like Linus Tech Tips and a few other reviewers out there, is that may have attributed a good chunk to why the TDP for these, or the power draw for these, is actually so low by comparison. So it's kind of impressive to see. So the RX 6800 has a 250 watt total power draw here, and I didn't put the RTX 3070 number. Oh no, actually we don't have RTX 3070 numbers yet because that hasn't released yet. That's why. It is rated at 18 average, 18% more performance than the 2080 Ti, which was the comparable model from last generation to the current gen 3070.
Did NVIDIA give a rating of like the performance difference between the 2080 Ti and the
See that I thought they did too, and they said they were doing like 50% more, right?
Wait, you mean power or performance? Because I have the performance number here. I just said 18% more performance.
Yeah,
18% more performance.
Google Doc. I'll check it out.
Okay, not AMD, NVIDIA.
Yeah,
and NVIDIA just when they announced the 3070, did they give a disparity between?
No, they compared it to the 2080 Ti in the sense that it was like slightly above the 2080 Ti.
Okay, I just couldn't remember if they actually had a number to it.
Yeah. I don't remember what the actual percentage, I guess, increase between the 2080 Ti and the 3070.
What was the release date of that?
Really, just curious.
Of what?
The 3070.
We covered it on the show.
The 3070 hasn't come out yet. They've actually pushed it back.
I'm sorry. The 3060.
Oh, the announcement.
It was September.
Yeah.
I'll check it out. You guys go ahead.
Anywho, so the big the card is set to release on November 18th. And the price not quite as good as I thought it was going to be by comparison here. The 3070 is listed. Excuse me, the Founders Edition 3070 is listed on NVIDIA's site at $499.
Yeah.
The AMD RX 6800 is listed at $579.
Yeah, I want to talk about price once you go through the specs of all of these, because I think there's a reason for what they're doing.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the problem here for AMD, of course, is, I mean, first off, you already knew what the other price was, and maybe there's, like cost reasons why you couldn't, lower the price for this, but $80 increase in price for what is essentially comparable performance. So there may not really be a reason to go with the RX 6800 here. But moving down to the next card, the RX 6800 XT, which is the comparator to the 3080, the RTX 3080, is pretty compelling here. So you have 72 compute units instead of the 60 from the 3080. You have
I believe they're compute units.
Compute units, yes.
There we go.
The 2.015 gigahertz base clock, 2.25 gigahertz boost clock. Again, 128 megabytes Infinity Cache, 16 gigs GDDR6, a 300 watt total power draw across the board versus the 3080s at 320 watts.
There you go.
So that extra 20 watts, it can matter depending on how much overhead you have available in your system. If you're already kind of pushing that limit, you might trip the overcurrent protection on your power supply, but Just something to keep in mind.
All right, to put in perspective, the 2080 Ti on this relative performance map to the general leap from what they were talking about, it's ranging about 3.5%, 3 to 3.5%, where the 3080 is at like 4.5%. So I'm gonna say the jump is probably about 25% from the 2080 Ti
onto the 3080, but not the 3070.
Correct. 3070 does not have is not on this list. It's got the 2070
I forget what NVIDIA
Super,
touted on that, because like
Ti.
When they had their graph during the launch event anyway, they showed like a horizontal dot that basically went straight across from it, maybe a little higher. But hold on,
if you're talking about the middle step is 25% higher performance, I would wager 18% is probably comparable for the 3070, right? Like it's not gonna be that much higher. So
right.
I think they're on par, which is why I agree with you on the.
So this was the graph. The only problem is there a next step? Because there was one where it showed the 3080 and the 3070 on it, I thought.
Yeah, there was.
Ars Technica had a really terrible like slideshow of the graphs.
So this is what I didn't like. Yeah, so there's this graphics card. This is what this image I'm looking at here. Johnny, you have to send me that link so I can screenshot it. But the 3070, they're comparing it against the 1080 Ti, which I don't like at all. Like that doesn't matter. Now, granted, this is FPS performance or where it ranks as far as resolution to FPS, which that graph means nothing to me. Like
nothing.
Like I already know what the 1080 Ti was capable of. I already know what the 2080 Ti was capable of. Give me the number. Don't show me this kind of thing on a graph. But
correct. Yeah.
But anyway,
back to the RX 68 XT.
Yeah, they're talking about the 2080 Ti.
Now, granted, 2080 Ti they were selling it for $1,200 at the time.
Well, so you can see where the 2080 Ti sat relative to the 1080 Ti in that last graph too, to kind of correlate that. But
on the last one.
So this one, you can see where the 2080 Ti and the 1080 Ti sat versus this one, the 1080 Ti versus the 3070. Mm-hmm. The only problem is the scale's different, so I really don't know how you compare that.
I don't know either.
But anyway, back to the RX 68.
A lot more informative.
But anyway, back to the RX 6800 XT. So again, the 300 versus 320 watt total board power, or TDP, and this will also again have a release date of November 18th, and it is priced at $649 instead of the 3080's $699, which, if you're getting comparable performance for $50 less, NVIDIA's probably there's going to be a side note to this, but the $50 price point for comparable performance obviously makes more sense, and a price to performance comparison here. The other thing too is, unless AMD is able to keep up with the demand for this, NVIDIA's already left kind of a stain on everyone else at this point of, wow, this whole process kind of sucks.
Who wants to be the first adopter again?
Like I went to NVIDIA's site and they are still out of stock.
Jesus.
It's just not.
Well,
or actually, if I remember right, actually, they may have even said that they were going to stop selling on their site.
Yeah.
But bots were a huge issue. Scalpers were massive. We saw MSI even had a subsidiary that was scalping brand new cards themselves. Like, all kinds of ridiculous stuff that's out there. So unless now AMD retroactively to this said, for our process, we're going to set guidelines for our companies to make sure that only like one person can acquire a maximum. I think it was 2 cards or 1 card or something like that. And they were going to implement certain purchasing restrictions or purchasing tech features like you do with, for example, the shoe industry, where you get put in a queue or you get put in a lottery to be able to grab yours, which wards away a lot of people who want to build bots to do this kind of stuff, because, well, that's a ton of waiting for maybe nothing, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get through.
I would just say,
I'm interested.
You have to, in order to get this, you have to call this person to realize you're not a bot, and they'll literally call them and be like, "Nope."
I feel like you'd end up seeing too many people go, no, I don't want to interact with human beings. That I'm fine, thanks. But I think
there's other ways around.
With the kind of turd stain that NVIDIA sort of put on their launch event, and the fact that they're still having issues now with supply, short of AMD coming in and like swooping it with the supply perspective, I feel like they're going to sort of go head to head here, and will probably equal out and say, yep, AMD is just about the same, so I'm going to probably go with this one because it's $50 less.
Well, like you said, the wattage is only 20 watts less, but I mean, again, if you're really trying to figure that out and it's $50 less, probably an easier route for you.
Well, I was going to say, if that power is going to be enough to where your power supply can't handle that, that would be an additional cost for you.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, yeah, exactly. If you're already riding the limit of what your power supply can handle, because that's what a lot of people do, is you buy one power supply that lasts you through whatever components you have in your system at the time, and right on the edge there. If you're already pushing the boundary maybe with the card you have, or if you would be pushing the boundary with, the 3080, it makes sense maybe to go with the 6800 XT so you can get the same performance for a slightly lower power draw.
I'm going to make a joke about it. Live is beat right on the edge. But it's not appropriate.
You still said it. Jesus.
But it's not appropriate. We can move on. But it just happened. So
it's not whatever. Bad as long as someone else isn't putting the cigarettes out on you, okay? Then you have a problem.
Maybe I want them to.
Well,
I mean, it's not a problem if he likes it, I guess.
There's nothing wrong with that.
All right, moving down to the last card here, the RX 6900 XT. Nice. It is the same size as the 6800 XT. So as opposed to the 3080 versus the 3090, where it was 2 slots versus 3 slots, this is all 2 slots. They're the same length cards. Everything is roughly the same on them, other than the design principles, essentially, and definitely these specs here. So 80 compute units versus 72. The clock speed is exactly the same, 2.015 gigahertz versus base clock, and 2.25 gigahertz boost clock, exactly the same as the 6800 XT. 128 megabyte Infinity Cache, 16 gigs GDR6. And this one to me is the big kicker. I don't understand how they pulled this one off. You added 8 compute units and 8 more compute units into this graphics card, but you kept the board power the same.
Yep.
It is also 300 watts of total board power usage, the same as the 6800 XT. I don't understand how you pulled that off.
They must be pulling back and keeping everything throttled.
So, I mean, chip binning is the way that, you determine which chips can go in certain computers or labeled as certain models based on how good the silicon is on certain chips by enabling and disabling features. So you must have really well bin chips to be able to pull the same power draw, or you have really bad bin chips and that just happens to be your middle ground, one or the other, which the latter of which I'd be so much happier with. You just have really bad chips that come out here that happen to equal what the 3080 does. That'd be fantastic.
That's what they'll tell you.
Well, I mean, if a 6950 XT comes out here, I don't understand why you'd get a 3090 ever.
Oh yeah,
especially just on the price alone.
Well, and getting to that, so for the December 8th release date, the 6900 XT is listed at $999, which the comparator here is the 3090 at $1499.
Yeah.
I mean, for what you would get for the 3080 for $200 more, you could get the 6900 XT.
See, and this is what I was going to talk about, their pricing structure. Because you're right, their low end is high, right? Especially comparing something that's the similar thing. But I think their goal is to make a tight target. So we've got AMD, we've got your back, we've got this, because you, Mark, make enough money and do use your computer enough that you're going to go ahead and buy the high end spec. So when someone who makes less money does come to you, you're going to say, well, this one's cheaper, but I use this AMD card. It's phenomenal. You probably want to go with this one. They're going to make up that little bit of cash on the low end to help alleviate the stress on the high end. It's going to equal out overall. I think it's a really smart idea, actually.
Oh, 100%. And I'm excited to see when the 3070 does drop, because I know the first thing AMD is going to do is post numbers to say how the 6800 compares against the 3070. And if it's in that same comparable limit, Sure, maybe it's worth recommending, or giving a recommendation for. So,
I have one question and one comment. One question being, is the $50 price point going to be enough to tear people who are, because I'm not a part of this community, I buy the same oil for my car that I have since I started driving.
Wee lad.
Yeah. So is product, what am I looking for? Loyalty going to be a factor here between NVIDIA and AMD?
You're not going to see a shift.
No, what I mean is so you're not going to see people who usually go NVIDIA to AMD for this?
Nope, probably not. So people who are diehard loyal Team Green fans are going to stay Team Green. They're going to stay with NVIDIA just because, these RTX 3000 series anyway, the launch event for that was astronomical. People lost their minds with it.
Oh, we covered it here. I mean, it was astounding. Hell, even though we're touting the XT here being $500 cheaper, the $1,499 price point for the 3090 was still pretty damn good.
Oh yeah. And there was a little bit of hesitation too, actually, with reviewers when the 3090 did come out, or the review units for the 3090s did come out, because a lot of people were like, well, so this is basically their Titan card. Because first off, they never had a number higher than the whatever 90 cards since they started doing this new numbering scheme with the 900 series, where they did specifically the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Plus, then they had the TIs, and then there's the Titan card and all that stuff. But they're not even touting the fact that there's any kind of Titan card or anything on the horizon for that. Now that might be part of their play here.
Yeah.
But at $1,499, you're already charging what the Titans did cost from last gen. Mm-hmm. So if there is a Titan card and it's supposed to have that much better performance over a 3090, what is that going to cost?
Yeah.
And if AMD is giving a similar card for 2/3 the price of your current high spec model, what are they going to do whenever suddenly they have even better bin chips that come out that can give you a Titan comparator here? Are we going to see a $1,500, what would be essentially an old Titan price, compared to like $2,000 or $2,500? I mean, I just don't know what the play here is.
It's for you people with all the money.
What do you mean, you people?
You people.
But I'm intrigued to see what happens. I'm gonna wait till the review units come out for the 6800 XT and the 6900 XT, because those are the two that I'm interested in. I don't know if the 6900 XT to me has enough appeal to pay the extra. Was it $250?
Well, or were you originally going to go with the 3080?
Well, so I was initially looking at the 3080, but I might be doing the 6800 XT instead.
Okay.
I was looking at the 6900 XT. The only reason I didn't even look at the 3090 is because there's no way I'm paying $1,500 for a graphics card. That's not happening.
Dude, you have the money.
That's
it's like a piss in a bucket, and a small piss. Not even a big
Mark
piss.
trips, his wallet falls out, and out of the wallet, a couple of pennies fall. All combined, $1,500.
That right there, he's drinking like orphan tears, rated at like $2,000 an ounce.
That glass is actual Cristal.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Made from the skulls of the orphans. So
Jesus. That got so dark so fast.
Well, when you shop at the black market, Mark,
it gets kind of dark. It's black market. Anyway, quick question I had here is, do you think that you're going to see the same thing that happened with NVIDIA happen with AMD because they were trying to catch up to NVIDIA or trying to get to market, quicker? Or, I mean, what do you think?
What do you mean?
Are you going to see the same issues that we did with NVIDIA, like possible card issues or whatever? Because you always said that your AMD look for a graphics card, you were never there. Like, that wasn't your thing. You were always with them for the GPU. You weren't with it for the graphics card. Now you're kind of flip-flopping. And
I mean, they have something to offer here. So with the last generation, the RDNA, or with Navi, there really wasn't a whole lot to pick between there that really made sense. So I might look at this just because, one, with the new 5000 series chips coming out, I had debated on updating my gaming rig to put a 5000 series chip in it, because I can swap that out with the same motherboard and not have to change out any of my other hardware for it. Plus, if smart memory access is going to be a feature that I need a 5000 series chip and a 6800, and it's worth the performance benefit there, sure. It just gives another reason to buy or have an AMD processor and an AMD GPU here.
All right, Brent. He's just a flip-flopper. He's going between Android and Apple and now NVIDIA and AMD. I can't trust this guy anymore. I don't even know.
Fair,
see,
before he's going to say that he hates PB&J sandwiches, and I just can't take it.
John here's an over-loyalist, even if,
I was going to say, he's actually following the market, which is what you're supposed to do as a consumer.
No. I totally agree with him. I was actually all up on the NVIDIA thing until they started screwing up, and I saw these prices, these specs, and I was like, man, if I was building a unit right now, I'd be totally going AMD.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I would recommend the 3500 and 3600 R7 chips from AMD all day for that like $120 price
point. And that's assuming that they're not totally full of shit.
Yeah,
well, we'll find out in November and December for sure.
Because, like you said, that power requirement just seems really weird. And I was that doesn't follow I'm not a computer expert, but it doesn't follow like what you expect.
If you look at any of the other major reviewers out there, they all look at that same number for both the 6800 and the 6900 XT and go, what? How? How did you pull that magic off?
Freaking voodoo.
I'm a what?
So I'm curious to see if they maybe don't have a higher power model down the line that has like 90 compute units and is like a Titan killer or something like that, or is a Titan replacement. So
it only uses 300 watts. You're like, wait, how'd you cram 10 more in there?
Like, I know they were definitely going to undercut the 3080. That was their intention with the 6800. But I feel like the real value here is really what they're doing to NVIDIA is just mushroom stamping them with the 6900 XT.
Well,
because the $500 difference for what you're getting is absolutely amazing.
And this is where I've sort of jumped on the AMD train with this, of realizing that Lisa Su is doing wonders for that company since she stepped in. The old AMD of the, was it like 2010 to 2016, 2017 era is over. Ryzen and the Zen line of processors, the new RDNA, but now specifically RDNA 2, RDNA 1 didn't really do much for them anyway as far as market share. But this new position that they're putting themselves in is really nice. And there is no reason not to jump on this if they're riding the train on both markets the entire way up.
If you thought NVIDIA had a bad time with keeping up with production, I think AMD is about to freaking find out exactly what kind of hell that is.
Well, and they're putting both of their major competitors in both markets, Intel and AMD. They're making them sweat right now. And I like that. One, it's good for the market as a whole. Yep. Competition's good for the market, good for the consumer. So I'm interested to see what comes in the next generation, probably 2 years from now, too.
I had two comments.
You heard it here
One,
first. Nope,
our DNA
Move on.
or our DNA? Every time you're like, our DNA, I'm like, what do you mean our DNA? What do you mean? What's going on here? Also,
recombinant DNA, Brent. Obviously, the machines have, amino acid proteins too, okay?
I'll wait till John's done. Grant. Navi, where's James Cameron? Where's Avatar? What are we doing here?
I tried to stop him.
They James Cameron by calling it Big Navi for the second generation.
I want you to know on my right side, I took little notes on my little notepad so that you guys couldn't see it, so I could make those jokes.
Wow. How long have you been holding those then? Like 30 minutes?
I walked. It's like 2 minutes in. I've been holding them in. Please let us know what you think about the new AMD graphics cards. They sound amazing. Do you think we are blowing this out of proportion? Do you think this sounds really incredible? Are you interested in these? Let us know in the comments below Mark's mustache, or you can let us know on Twitter.
Not a whole lot of space anymore. Look at that.
I know. If you shaved off the left and the right side a little bit, there's more space.